Hi, everyone. This is exciting. This is my first live stream video here on YouTube, on the YouTube platform. So thank you all for showing up. And this video will also be available recorded after we do the live stream. So I'm going to be experimenting with this format and hopefully doing this a lot more in the future. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. It'll allow me to bring in photos, videos, and different content that I've recorded over the years, and for us to discuss it, and for you to ask questions, for me to dive in a little bit deeper on some of the context behind the videos as well, and for us to discuss different themes. So today we are looking at the question, and a question I'm sure we'll continue with, but what is bachata? And I thought to do this, we would look at some of the videos, one video in particular that has some interviews that I've done with Edilio, with Martires, different musicians, bachata musicians, and we could kind of break it down bit by bit and hear their opinions and their sort of their point of view on it, and then we can talk about it. And certainly want to hear your feedback in the comments and sort of your thoughts on it. I know we're going to have some different people watching that have done extensive research in the Dominican Republic and abroad on the topic of bachata, both dance and music. So, from essentially, if I'm given, the elevator pitch about what is bachata, I often say it's a music and dance genre with origins and very much alive in the Dominican Republic. So that's sort of my own elevator what is bachata kind of pitch, if I only have one sentence to describe it. But really, there's a lot of different directions you can take that question depending on what context you're talking about, who you're explaining it to, how much time you have. And certainly one of the most interesting things that I found over the years, over a decade now, of interviewing people about bachata, is just the diverse points of view and at times contradictory opinions by literally the creators of bachata, sometimes what appears to be contradictory opinions about its origins, what it is, what it means, etc. So we're going to look at that a little bit, and I think we're going to start off with a photo that I oftentimes start my live presentation if I'm presenting at a festival or at a university. So here we are. We have Joan Soriano with his two guitars. He actually has more than two guitars, of course. But here we have in his lap the electroacoustic Yamaha guitar. It's a guitar like that he plays his music on, steel string. Generally in concert or recording, he'll run it through, an effects pedal or some sort of add certain effects to it to achieve that distinct sound and the sound that he likes from his guitar. But then next to his cheek, cradled with affection, is a guitar replica. So let me go back just for a second. This is a photo I took of him. He's sitting on the front porch of his family's home, his parents' home in the countryside of La Luisa. So he's sitting on the front porch where he himself started to learn guitar at the age of, I think, 8 or 9 years old. So as a young child, and his first instrument was a guitar very similar to that tin can guitar that he's holding next to his cheek. So he handmade that replica there that you see, so I could visually see the type of guitar he learned on. And it's made from a tin can, an oil can. It's, carved wood and then fishing line. And from there, when they saw he had talent, they scraped together a little money and bought him a little bit better, more of not a professional guitar, but an actual guitar. And then later on, he worked his way up. So, I think this photo here says to me, a lot about what bachata is. You know, you see Joan as you see the lead singer, so the importance of the vocals, the voice, the person, the story with the guitar. So that relationship, that conversation that happens between guitar and person and story is certainly essential. But also in seeing that tin can guitar, or guitarrita de lata, as he says, um, you you kind of get a sense of where bachata and where the origins of bachata come from, and the making do with what you have resource wise. So a lot of the sound and a lot of the stories that I've heard over the years by the musicians involve oftentimes a sort of struggle, um, in order to express themselves or make their music, whether it's a struggle with bachata being marginalized within the Dominican Republic. So just being heard, being able to create your music, or whether you're trying to, play louder. And so you have limited resources, but you're trying to create your own sort of sound system, to amplify. So there's all these different things that have, over the course of history, influenced what we have today. So I think this photo says a lot about, for me, about where bachata is, what it is, and where it comes from. Now we're going to take a look real quick at, well, it's not super quick. We have all the time in the world. So we're going to look at this video here. And this is a video you can watch completely on my channel in YouTube. I think it's called Bachata Orgullo, sort of pride. And, you can watch it later, or you can use it if you're studying or in your classes. Feel free to show it around, but we're going to kind of take it bit by bit. So here's the first scene here. I'm going to watch along with you.
Con los padres, amistades, mujeres, lo que sea, y a nivel de la bachata, haría su problema.
So that first scene there was recorded at a Zorro Negro, he's a bachata musician, concert, just in a little club there. So I recorded that, and I thought it was a good way to open, because again, sometimes just immersing yourself, sometimes just being around it says a lot more about what something is than an attempt at defining it with words or something like that. So you immediately see dance, you see music, live music, you see the environment, kind of the social activity of it, and you kind of get the flavor of it, right? So that's why I started that. And then the young man there that follows it talks about bachata as a sort of a help. And actually Ramon Cordero, who I also interviewed, one of the great voices of bachata, one of my favorite voices in bachata music, certainly, who Adilio had a wonderful partnership with for many, many years, until Ramon passed away. But he also said, he thought that bachata gave a lot to people in the Dominican Republic and abroad for that matter, but specifically he was talking in the Dominican Republic because of that. It's a way to deal with the struggles of life. It might be an escape, it might be a catharsis, it might be sort of this emotional expression, and that's a really, really important element that I found in the culture. So, whatever, as that young man said, whatever problems you may be having, whether it's in relationship, whether it's in family, bachata can help you alleviate those problems, can help you deal with those problems. And that's what's so powerful about music for all of us who love music and who get into it. So if any of you have any thoughts on that or comments, regarding what you've seen or how bachata has impacted your life personally, or not just bachata, but music, feel free to write that in the comments or chat for later, because I'd love to hear that. But when someone's first introduced to another genre of music or dance, that's an element that oftentimes is overlooked. You may have experienced it in other genres, but oftentimes when we're first exploring something, we don't have that element. It doesn't mean the same thing. So here we go with another young man here.
Baila mucha bachata en todos los sitios, aquí se baila bachata.
Es algo que se siente, es algo que se lleva en la sangre. Nosotros los dominicanos, donde vemos una bachata, declarado que vamos a bailar.
Puede llegar a estar dentro de ti de una manera muy fuerte, puede crear muchas emociones fuertes en uno. La bachata, yo creo que para uno bailarla debe de sentirla. La bachata, yo creo que para...
So that just makes me smile. Juan and his sister dancing. Such a joy to capture that dance. Now, Juan and Melanie, his partner Melanie, are, of course, bachata instructors now internationally and here in the U.S. They live now. So that was recorded in his hometown in the Dominican Republic, in their hometown with his sister there. And again, he's pointing to that emotional aspect of it. So we're going to go on, watch a little bit more.
La bachata me inspira a reír, a saltar, a bailar, a cantar, a tomar también unos traguitos. Entonces, cuando el dominicano principalmente escucha la bachata, se le entra como una euforia que lo que quiere es calle.
La bachata aquí en Dominicana es un...
So love that. What she was saying, what Juan's sister was saying, that for her, listening to bachata, a euphoria enters, right? A euphoria enters, and what she's talking about also is kind of life, alegría, party, right? She's saying this euphoria enters, and you kind of want to go out, you want to hit the streets. That next dance that you saw was recorded near Santo Domingo in a barrio kind of about 30 minutes from the capital, Santo Domingo, and just a Sunday afternoon, like here we are, Sunday afternoon in the Dominican Republic, at least pre-COVID. I haven't been there since COVID, but Sunday afternoons, merengue típico. It was a good time for live music Sunday afternoon. So if I have it right, that was a Sunday afternoon that dance was filmed.
Una cosa de lo que más batea, ya que viene de descendencia, de atrás. Entonces, cuando uno está bailando bachatica y esa cosa, uno coge como un sazón, porque eso es como... La bachata para nosotros aquí es como comiendo el puerco en diciembre. Es una vaina bacana. Nosotros sentimos, sufrimos, nosotros hacemos de todo por la bachata. Nosotros estamos llorados. Yo mismito soy uno que bota mi lágrima pendeja a veces.
Puede pensar.
We got to talk about Yenny and Alejandro, right? Dancing. So for one, they both have some incredible videos out there. They're both active dance teachers in the Dominican Republic now. So you can certainly find them on Instagram, Facebook, and seek them out. But that video there on my channel, I think it's the most popular dance video I've filmed still. And Edwin, who we have here, we've talked about this before, how difficult it is to film and to capture a really great social dance. One, you're always dealing with dim lighting. There's always the technical aspects of it. A lot of times bachata, it's in a dark environment, and so our eyes, we may see it, but it's hard to capture with a camera. But then there's the element of, once you're filming something, how does that change how someone dances? Are they now performing instead of just sinking in, feeling the music, and just really connecting with your partner? So it is difficult to film a spontaneous, organic social dance. And that was one. Joanne was with me that day, and we had all gone out. We had met Yenny and some others, Alejandro and others, and we're at that club. And so we were just dancing socially. But for that video, we moved out into the street. There was just a little more space and light. And they were dancing to a song by Andy Santiago. So it just really went, and people loved that video, and of course loved their dancing, and they continue to do that. So definitely look them up as well. Edwin says this is a good time to bring in some of our guests. Edwin says, yes, it's so difficult. Once the camera's on, anything can happen. That is right. That is right. Like, we're going to have to do a live stream or a video just on the art of, well, you could do it on, for one, how to record yourself. If you're a dancer, a performer, a teacher, and you're trying for that organic look, a spontaneous look, what are some strategies to go about? But then as a filmmaker, or as someone that's researching, what are the difficulties? What are the challenges? What are tips for recording a scene, and being sensitive to the people you're filming as well? Because if you don't know them, they may not like that. But that's another topic for another day. We have Patrick here, one of the best work introducing the organic Dominican bachata. Thanks, Patrick. Great to see you. So this next video here, this is Margarita. And I think this is really profound, what she said. And again, I just love interviewing people that have grown up since childhood, really immersed in either a dance or a music, because what they say is with very little prompting or question, can often be very, very profound. So
de alguien que perdiste hace muchos años.
may rewind
Puedes
just a little.
pensar de alguien que perdiste hace muchos años, o de alguien que conoces hace poco tiempo, y tú vives el recuerdo, el pasado, todo lo lleva ahí. Cuando tú estás bebiendo, disfrutando con una bachata, tú vas recordando el pasado y vas viviendo el presente. La bachata es así, la música.
So what I loved what she said, and I think it speaks on music in general, but she talked about the past, present, and future when experiencing bachata or when experiencing music. And I had never heard it put quite that way. But it's something, when I heard, it really connected with me as well. Past, so much of what we're bringing in when we're hearing a song might be past experiences, maybe a loss, maybe it's something that happened, missing someone, But at the same time, projecting into the future, longing, desire, hopes, fears, these different things in the future. And at the same time, when you're listening to music and when you're dancing, when you're at your best or when it's at its best, when you're really in it, you're really in the present. I think you're really experiencing it. And that's one of the aspects about music and dance that we love, is being in the present at that moment. So thought that was great. We have a question by Gabriel. He's asking, what I'm hearing is that you may be making a series of live streams. That's what I'm hoping to do. And I'd like to bring in interviews and guests, but also it's a way I've been thinking, what is a way where I can sort of break down some of the videos I have and share about them in more in-depth context, and also do these sort of like these live presentations that I do, but how can I do them online as well? So I do hope to do it more in the future. This is an experiment today, but I hope to do it more in the future. And Gabrielle is doing some amazing research right now on bachata, and has been for a while. So I'd love to hear more about that, both on the phone, hopefully soon, and in the comments. But if there's a number of people on this chat I see right now that have done extensive work in bachata. So, jotting down these names, connecting together, finding each other is a good idea. So hopefully this can be a resource for that as well.
El bachata es un género musical.
La bachata tiene dos esencias, una española y otra africana.
La bachata es un sentir del amor y el desamor. Si no se canta con el alma, no es bachata.
That's very good. So we went from bachata is a musical genre. That's right. Very simple, plain. Then Billy Bachata, who passed on recently, one of the greatest bass players in bachata history. Wonderful person, always so helpful to so many people, so knowledgeable, and always there. So I know in my own work and my own research, many times he was there to guide me with different things, to share opinions, and he is certainly missed for sure. Really important what he said, that those different cultural essences that exist in bachata, and he mentioned Africa, the African essence, and that European essence. And you could also talk about the indigenous, right? The island, the indigenous essence too. But these mixtures within the music and the dance, for that matter, of different cultures over time. And then Luis Segura giving us this really kind of, just people often ask, what is bachata? And they want a very clean definition. Well, here we have one of the legends, the pioneers, the creators of the genre, giving this definition that's, whoa, he's saying if you don't sing it with your soul, then it's not bachata, right? That's when I asked him, what is bachata? What is bachata? If you don't sing it with the soul, then it's not bachata. So, you have all this variation of definition. Jessica asks, hey, Jessica, thanks for coming. Very short notice. I just let you know. Will you be saving these live streams to be watched later? Yes. If I don't make any major mistakes. And one of them that I can't cut out, that I'll save them. So yeah, I will save them as we go along here. So
tú sientes que el tipo está expresando una melancolía, una tristeza, algo lo está atormentando, ese amor que se fue, la muchacha que lo traicionó, la esperanza de cambiar. Tú lo sientes en esa melodía, en esa forma de ejecutar la guitarra, en la forma del cantante expresarse. Para mí esa melancolía, ese sentimiento expresado musicalmente, eso es bachata, con guitarra, bongo, bajo y guira, y un cantante. Esa es la bachata.
So cool what he said there. So one, he, just as Billy had done in other instruments and that you hear a lot, he made reference to the trying to talk Spanish and English at the same time, the 5 essential instruments, sort of those base foundational instruments in bachata, right? The lead guitar, the rhythm guitar, the bass guitar, the bongo, and the guira, and the voice, add for the 6th, the voice of the singer, so making mention of that. But then before that, Martínez talks about the feeling, that sound of melancholy, the blues, right? As another genre puts it, but that blues, that melancholy, you might have heard the word amargue, but that feeling that we hear not only in the voice, not only in the lyrics, but you hear in the music, in the guitar. For him, that is an essential part of bachata. And Martínez, by the way, is certainly one of the most important lead guitarists and arrangers in bachata history. A recent project, of course, that he was very active on was the Utopia album by Romeo. But he's produced or arranged a very diverse sort of sound and number of artists in bachata, from Robin Carreño, some of those early albums, he was playing requinto on those, and various albums throughout with Robin Carreño. So you got that sound. But then Monchi and Alexandra, he was instrumental in arranging that, lead guitar, putting the group together, etc. So those are very different sounds, and it takes a special musician to be able to play with different artists or produce different artists and allow their unique and individual sounds and voices to shine through. So they're not all sounding the same. So really cool to have interviewed him as well. We have Joan in concert.
Papá de la bachata. El papá de la bachata fue un tipo que tuvo con la mamá de la bachata y se fue y nadie supo quién fue. Dejó a ese hijo, lo dejó rodando.
No sé si tú lo sabes.
That interview there with Edilio, that was kind of what I wanted to do the whole live stream about, but I thought, well, we'll do the whole video. But that was where I was trying to get to right here. No hay papá de la bachata. There's not a father of bachata, or basically saying there's not a singular creator. And so let me give you some context, and maybe we can discuss that. So that was sort of where I'm trying to get to. Because, and it gets to the point that it's not easy. A lot of times we want a clear line of what year did bachata start? Oftentimes we'll say 1962. that Jose Manuel Calderon recorded the first bachata, and clean, simple. But of course, nothing's ever really that clean and simple, is it? So here we have Idilio, sort of in response to that, into that idea that there's one creator or a singular time of it being created, is saying, no, there's not. No hay papá de la bachata. But then he's like, oh, the father of bachata was like a parent who had a child with the mother of bachata, but then that father left and no one knows who it is. So that's his sort of the picture he's painting there, that, well, if there was a creator, we can never really know who it is. And then of course it also brings up there's two parents. Well, the mother of bachata, what about the mother of bachata? So I thought it was really interesting. But one aspect of that, just to give context to that, is Idilio's belief. And of course, I'd love to hear more from him on this in the future. But I have interviewed him quite a number of times, so hopefully I'm speaking correctly. But I think certainly he believes that bachata and what they were playing, the music that he was playing in the 60s, 70s, is a continuation of Latin American guitar music that was happening before the 60s, in the 50s and before, in places like Puerto Rico, Ecuador, Mexico, New York, right? Cuba. So Idilio and those early musicians, Jose Manuel Calderon, Luis Segura, they were listening to music, right? And they were being influenced by other music. And so bachata was evolving out of that. So that concept is really, really, really interesting to think about, that kind of this continuation. But then you have to ask the question of when did bachata take on its own personality? When did it become sort of its own entity? And Nano, who's the son of Idilio, once told me he compared it to a recipe, a cooking recipe, like a sancocho, like a traditional Dominican soup, or it could be any recipe. But, you're getting these ingredients, you're learning the recipe. Maybe you have a friend, let's say Carlos Cinta, because he loves food analogies within dance and music. He tells me a recipe he knows. Well, I don't write it down. I listen to it. Maybe I have some of the ingredients, maybe I don't have everything. I substitute for the yuca, maybe I add potatoes. It starts taking on my own flavor, my own thing. And so that's what Nano talked about with the bolero and the guitar music that was happening around the Caribbean and in Latin America, as it began to take on a really distinct Dominican personality or Dominican trait, and have this different sound, right? This very distinct and recognizable sound, its own recipe. And changing from bolero into bachata, and there's not one singular time that happened, and there's different opinions by different experts, and I think there are many valid points to that. So again, I'd love to hear. This would be something that I'd love to hear from many people that are watching, and of course I'd love to hear more from the musicians I've interviewed delving into this as well. So let's hear from Nano here.
¿Dónde viene el nombre de bachata? Bachata es una reunión de amigos, una reunión puede ser amigos, puede ser familiares, que se reúnen en el patio de su casa, puede ser hacer una parrillada, a conversar, y cada uno tiene un instrumento, lo que no tiene que ser específicamente tocar bachata, puede ser tocar merengue. Y cada uno agarra un instrumento y empieza y hace una chelcha, como decimos nosotros los dominicanos. Entonces es una bachata, ¿me entiendes? Entonces al género se le pone el nombre de bachata porque hubieron, como te dije, músicos muy reconocido allá, que no querían que esa música tan simple sobrepasara su música tan profunda. Entonces le dijeron en los medios, eso es lo que es una bachata, es decir, eso es lo que es un can pasajero.
So that's Nano talking about sort of the origin of the word as well. So before bachata, the word bachata was used as a term to describe a music and dance genre. Bachata meant, as he pointed out, it was a certain type of party, fiesta del patio, right? Like what we're seeing here. Just, nothing too formal. Maybe some friends would gather, family would gather. You play some music. Maybe you'd have a little food, some drinks, and it was just an informal gathering, and that was a bachata. So then, as he's saying, well, then how did that word come to be used to describe a music and dance genre? So first, let's go back a second to Edilio. So before, the music that they were playing, before it was already being played in the 60s and 70s, but before it was being called bachata, the music that we now call early bachata, or we now call the first bachata, it wasn't referred to as bachata at the time. It was referred to as bolero, or música de guitarra, guitar music, but bolero, right? So it had a different name. But then, as Nano is pointing out, I think it was in the 70s, the media and certain figures in the media began referring to this type of guitar music as bachata. And when that term was first used, it was used as an insult, right? It was used to put down the music, to say that this was simple, that it didn't have the same sophistication or class as, let's say, something like orchestra merengue or something else. And so, it was a term that was then being used within the media, and how bachata spread, and how its history of the term, and how it went from really an insult. To be called a bachatero was an insult early on. To say you played bachata was an insult. But then, of course, now the word has been reclaimed for the most part. And, were many of the musicians that were probably saying bad things, or maybe criticizing it at one point, everybody wanted to record or play bachata because there became more money in it, more fame. So really interesting history of the word itself. And let's hear a little bit more about that from Edilio.
Yo era un parrandero, hablarle materialmente. Yo era un parrandero.
Yo viéndole en el programa, dijo que esa música se llamaba bachata. Que bachata es que lo que grabábamos no sabíamos leer ni escribir. Que esa música era de guardia, de mujeres de cabaret, que lo que le escuchaban se ponían al mismo nivel de lo que la grababan. Y desde ese día, esa música marcó, ese nombre se le puso a ese género musical, bachata, y se dividió el bolero con la bachata.
So, again, what Edilio says, that when people in the media, he said he saw on television a certain personality say that, this music is bachata, and again, that person was, and the conversation around it was inferring or applying that the people that played it, listened to it, couldn't read or write, would say of a lower class. So there was all those class connotations and connotations of value being put on the name, both to those that played it and listened to it. And he's saying it was during that time that it began to divide what was called bolero at the time, now began to be called bachata. Okay. But again, that marginalization of bachata within the Dominican Republic and the discrimination against it was something that really surprised me. And actually, that experience with it led me to do a lot of the documentary film work I did. So I studied abroad in the Dominican Republic for a year, and I already knew and loved bachata from my time on the East Coast in DC, coaching soccer. Some of the kids on the team were this was in the late '90s, listening to bachata, and I connected with it. Enjoyed it. So when I had a chance to study abroad in the Dominican Republic, I did, largely because of the music and dance. But getting to the Dominican Republic, I was very surprised to find out that bachata was still very much not accepted by in different places within the culture and society. You know, I might go to a club and say, "Oh, would you play bachata?" And they'd be like, "No, we don't play that here." Kind of looking down on it, you know. And this was in the early mid 2000s. It wasn't that long ago that we were experiencing that. So that, in discovering that, was one of the things I thought, wow, this is really, really interesting. I'd like to do a film. And it sort of led me ultimately to do a film with Joan Soriano and the Duke of Bachata as well. So I'm going to get to some of these comments and questions here in a second. We're getting to the end of the video. Let's listen to a little bit more here. Let's listen to Martínez talk about that marginalization, and then we'll kind of enter into the discussion part.
El nombre de bachata, según me cuentan, esos son unos bachateros, eso es bachata, como algo que no era bien. Hoy en día es bonito, hoy en día, oye, toco bachadito, uno ve los chamaquitos jovencitos y bonitos tocando bachata y todas las cosas. Gracias a un trabajo que hicieron maestros como Edilio, maestros como Luis Segura, como José Manuel Calderón, hicieron un trabajo, Marino Pérez, Ángel Guerrero, Bolívar Peralta, un sinnúmero de gente que Ramón Torres, Ramón Cordero, las mismas mujeres que te mencioné, todos esos bachateros, de Eladio Romero Santos, Víctor Esteves, toda esa gente se mantuvieron durante años soportando eso y siendo discriminados, y siendo Leonardo Paniagua.
So again, I think that's a good place kind of to leave it. But where Martínez is transitioning there is, you know, where the word and the music itself and experiencing the music was once something really looked down upon as not something very good. And as Edilio mentioned, called música de guardia, like soldiers' music, or música de cabaret, right? Like music of prostitution, etc. You know, kind of given those names and called various names throughout its history. Now it's more, it was always listened to, it always had a public, you know, but now it's more widely accepted culturally and within the country. And, you know, really important what he mentions, that's due to many of the early pioneers, Edilio, Ramon, Luis Segura, Blas Duran, you know, all these names of people that struggled for very little recognition, very little money, and against a lot of odds, but kept at the music, kept at it, because they valued it, because they valued that life and that form of expression and that music, and that got it to where, in a sense, more people can more freely play it, experience it, etc. So this was, I hope you enjoyed the live stream. It'll get smoother throughout. And I want to look at a few of these comments here and highlight a few so we can take this into the discussion if we have a little time or interest. We've got Leo from New Jersey. Thank you for joining us. That's awesome. He also mentioned that bachata is a big part of Dominican culture. So I definitely asked. And then we have from London, UK. So this is awesome. We have an international view. Let's look for any questions. I know Gabrielle had one. Let's see. Do you feel that in this context, bachata continuing guitar music is a response to Dominicans wanting to replicate the sound of other music, but in their own voice? I'm not sure where I'm going to go with that question, but I will say, for one, Adelio at one point was like, we copied music. And that was actually one of the things that people said early on, one of the kind of reasons they said, bachata is doing covers. And influence from other music has always been an important part of bachata and continues to be, whether it's drawing on influence from boleros or from vallenatos from Colombia. There's dozens and dozens of the bachatas we love are originally vallenatos, so there's always been this kind of sharing of music. Now, of course, there's tons of original music as well, as far as original songwriting. But I think, at that period of time, certainly many of the early musicians and continued out, these are musicians that are listening and learning their craft by ear. And so like Joan Soriano, so kind of, he talks about working in the fields with his father as a child. And, there'd be that little radio in the field that they would bring with them. And those bachatas or merengues, that music recording into his mind. And so when he was able to get his little guitar and able to start creating his own sound, he was having to recall what he'd heard and play it back. And so, it took on he's got a very distinct guitar style and a very distinct voice, a very authentic sound. And Adelio certainly mentioned that for him. Adelio really values that individual sound and the idea that, he oftentimes resists when you try to box bachata in or generalize it as one thing. He resists that. And he's talked about sort of more of these universal elements in the music. So, for Adelio, he really viewed it as these different voices, these different personalities interacting with Latin American guitar music and music they were hearing, and then wanting to create their own music. And sort of that if you do it, it sort of will naturally take on your own voice if you're doing it authentically. So Sebastian and I watched boxing last night together. I don't know if we have any other boxing fans out there, but anyway, we watched boxing tonight. Would love to do an entire convo on covers. I would too. Yet covers, and I want to send out my own team of researchers, whoever's listening, researchers, to report back to me, because I have a lot of questions on covers. I know a lot of music or bachata music and have heard a lot, but my lovely wife Lorena is Colombian, so visiting Colombia, these last few years, and getting to hear more vallenato. For one, I've certainly before visiting Colombia, I already knew that vallenato was an important, very important genre in influencing bachata. But since, I've just really been surprised. I'll hear a vallenato, I'll be like, wait, I know that. Oh, that's a bachata I love. And so I would love to have more of a conversation around that, and I'd love more people to go out and look for the rancheras, look for vallenato, bolero, and to get an idea of the covers and the influence in bachata music, just a more extensive and complete idea for my own curiosity and interest, to kind of complete that, as well as the original music that we know, and the songwriters, etc. So I think that's a great idea. Got Jessica. Can't think of any questions at the moment, but I appreciate you always sharing your work. Thanks, Jessica. Thanks for coming. And Jessica has a running series as well for the love of bachata, and she's doing bringing in a lot of great instructors, educators related to bachata dance, but also music, and which you can find online. So it's a really great resource, and she's a great resource to look for that, as far as just continuing both in person and online education, especially related to the dance. Oh, Sebastian says he already started. Good. We've got one. So I want to thank everybody for coming for this first one, and I'll give you a little more heads up next time I do a live stream, but it will be soon. And we can kind of continue these topics, but definitely helps me grow, because I have, after I guess I started filming with Joan, the Duke of Bachata, in 2007, studied abroad in the Dominican Republic 2003, 2004. So that was kind of my first diving in. But then living with Joan and filming that documentary, that was the real intro. And I always remember something that Ben said, again, going back to that question, what is bachata? There's a lot of different ways to explore it or answer it, or maybe you don't even really need an answer to it, really. It's kind of fun to experience it. But Benjamin de Menil, the head of Yasso Records and produced a lot of Joan's music, sort of mentioned, we were talking one day, and he was like, just riding around with Joan in the car for one day, you get more of an idea of what bachata is, than any of these wordy definitions. So it's that idea of experiencing it. So really encourage all of you to continue experiencing it, enjoying it, and other genres as well. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.